Good afternoon, everyone, distinguished guests and participants, and those of you who are attending online. I would like to welcome you to our first parallel session, number one, on work organization and organizational risks on the digitalized workplace. My name is Yannis Anifandis, and I'm thrilled to chair this session today and have a number of distinguished speakers in here to present you the topic with the focus on the organizational aspects that digital technologies and artificial intelligence have brought to the modern workplace. These days, we are coming to an end of our campaign on digitalization, and actually what a journey this has been. Everything started many years ago with a foresight study that we conducted, identifying main areas of research, followed by a big overview program and many research projects on the different areas that consist our campaign today, that have to do with automation of tasks, platform work, algorithmic management, telework and remote work, and also these smart digital systems that monitor occupational safety and health, and provide, on one hand, so many opportunities to improve work and improve the workplace and work conditions, but on the same time, there are so many new challenges associated with the use of all these technologies. And our role as EU-OSHA is to identify the challenges and identify how we can effectively manage the new hazards, the new risks that are associated with the use of digital technologies. And in this campaign, there were so many different aspects to cover. And apart from the studies that we have conducted, including literature reviews that resulted also to big reports, to policy briefs, it was equally important to identify and develop case studies, to identify what was happening in European workplaces and identify all those good practices and what works well and what doesn't work well when it comes to the implementation of digital technologies in the workplace, in order somehow to diffuse this knowledge, this know-how to workplaces around Europe, especially small and medium enterprises that need most help when it comes to the implementation of digital technologies. Most of us, at least myself, I belong to what the young generations would say, Generation X. And we have actually experienced the analog world, but we have also witnessed the transition to the digital world today. And today we are having actually all the processing power of our personal computer of the 90s multiplied by many times just in our wrist, in our smartwatch. So many things have changed during these 30 years, not only in our private life, but also in our work life. There is a rapid adoption of digital technologies that has transformed how work is structured and managed today. We can see actually the shift from the traditional hierarchical models of work, the typical 9-to-5 thing that used to be the status during the previous years. Nowadays we have hybrid work and flexible and remote work arrangements, while we can see the increase in the automation of routine tasks, especially, enable enterprises to change the way that they produce. Artificial intelligence, on top of that, is further used to augment and change the way that we work, to automate, to optimize and reorganize work. And when we started all these big research programs back in 2020, it looks like quite some time now, 5 years, applications and technologies like augmented reality or generative AI were not even there. And nowadays it is quite simple for everybody to use this kind of generative AI machines in order to produce text, videos, sound, and so on. So our session today brings together experts, researchers, and practitioners from a number of different areas in order to discuss the topic of work organization. We will start with Dr. Sasha Wisniewski from the Federal Institute of Occupational Safety and Health in Germany, who will present the OSH impacts of advanced robotics and automation in the workplace. Then Ms. Sira Urzi-Brancati from Eurofound will present findings from the Eurofound Working Conditions Survey, the latest version of the survey that was conducted back in 2024, last year, offering a comprehensive view of digital workplace profiles and working conditions across Europe. After that, Ms. Ana Rosa Pesole from ILO will discuss the implications of algorithmic management for work organization, risks for occupational safety and health, and policy responses. And last but not least, Ms. Giovanna Pandrini will highlight the Good Practice Award. Ms. Pandrini actually is coming from a winery in northern Italy that is a winner of our Good Practice Award, and will discuss about how digital technologies were implemented in their business and how things have changed after the implementation of this technology. Together, these contributions will help us to understand all the opportunities and the challenges that are posed by digital technologies, and how organizations can foster safe, healthy, and fair working environments in the digital age as work is reorganized. So, without any further delay, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Sasha Wisniewski, who is head of the unit Human Factors Ergonomics at the German Federal Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, BAUA. Sasha holds a doctoral degree in industrial engineering. His fields of expertise are anthropometry and digital human modeling, ergonomics of smart information and communication technologies, and human factors in robotics. His work focuses on human-technology interaction in the working world, with special emphasis in innovative technologies for physical and cognitive work assistance. Actually, we have worked with Sasha some years ago on the area of automation of tasks and advanced robotics and collaborative robots. And in his presentation, Sasha will examine the OSH impact of advanced robotics and automation in the workplace. Sasha, the floor is yours.
Yes. Well, thank you, Yannis, for the introduction. Thank you very much to EU-OSHA for the kind invitation to speak to you today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very much honored to be part today of this round of discussion to talk about, well, OSH impact of emerging technologies with a specific focus on work organization, organization aspects. As Johannes has introduced myself, I'm from Germany, from BAUA, from the Federal Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and we work there for our Federal Ministry of Work and Social Affairs. So we are their governmental research institution. And basically in 2020, we started working together with EU-OSHA because automation of tasks, as you will find on the website, was one part of the campaign. So what I'm going to present you now for the next 10 to 15 minutes are some of the results in a nutshell. We worked together for 3 years, so you get now 3 years of results within 15 minutes. The slides I have are quite complex, so I will not go into details for each specific slide, but I think you will find all the slides, you find the updated slides with the correct source on the bottom, everything you find on the web. And my first slide, when we talk about emerging technologies, about robotics and about AI-based systems, and is, well, that we always have to talk about tasks. Because what we did for EU-OSHA wanted to know, please do a literature review on robotics, OSH impacts, and AI-based systems. So we collected all that literature, and you could say, well, robotics is quite specific, because you have now home office, that are the other aspects like algorithmic management and home office and robotics is specific, so it's easy to do research on that. But we found so much literature on different OSH impacts that it wasn't that easy. And we found the reason why you always get the answer from a human factors engineer, it depends. You ask him, what's the impact? He's like, yeah, it depends. And the question is why it depends. And we developed this kind of taxonomy with EU-OSHA together. And I just briefly want to show you why always people say it depends if we are talking about different technologies. It depends because, well, we have to take a look on what kind of task are we working. Is it a physical task for robots? Is it a cognitive task where you use, for example, smart ICT? The question is, do you work with information? Do you work together with a person? Do you work together with an object? Is it a routine task? Is it maybe non-routine? Is it assistance or is it substitution? And then also the question is, well, then we might have physical impact, psychosocial impact, or organizational impact. Because if you have a technology which is replacing workers, you have an organizational dimension which is fear of job loss. And you have to manage that way different than if you have a cobot assisting a person, which is then maybe more of a physical aspect. So that's my first message combined in this slide, is the task matters, the technology matters, and it depends on the kind of task and technology you are using. We did for EU-OSHA, just to give you an example, we did for EU-OSHA 16 use cases, 11 of them in detail. You find all of them on in the website, and with really very nice graphics that were done, where we summarize, I mean, you have 11 pages, so this use case is 11 pages, but quickly summarize, we have here a gas infrastructure operator from Norway, where people used to have the need to climb into pipes and inspect them. And they were now replaced by a robot, and you had teleoperation of the robot. So a real good use case of advanced robotics supporting people, taking them away from dangerous tasks. And here you can see that. We have less exposure to risks, but the problem is here on the other side we could see fear of job loss, because maybe the robots will be able to do it completely on their own in the future. So that was something also reported. In the middle, there was a little bit cognitive load, because of course, if you operate these systems, you have complex displays, you have complex information, you have to manage that because you're not in the pipe anymore. So that's, for example, that's one OSH impact, or that's the OSH impacts we saw there. And as we always see, if you have light, you have shadow, we have advantages and opportunities, and we have challenges. We did that as well that it was a US startup, because what they did, they took excavators and they put AI in the excavators. And in the end, you didn't have to operate them manually anymore, but they could be doing trenching. Well, out there where you have a lot of land. So this is probably not a very good idea to have automated trenching, for example, here in Brussels. The technology isn't that ready at the moment, but still, we see this kind of technology, and I think later with Giovanna, she will also present something in the vineyard, which is a little different, but also a little similar. And also one example, and here you see also the organizational impact. Well, first, an individual impact, which is, again, less exposure to physical risks. But on the other hand, well, you have increased cognitive demand, and also the organizational impact. What you could see here is a complete transformation of a job, because you used to sit in the excavator whole day long and doing trenching. And now you're sitting, operating that excavator, which is maybe 100 kilometers miles away, and maybe you're even having the oversight over 5 excavators doing trenching, and you just have to teleoperate them sometimes. So this is another example where you see robotic systems, drones, AI-based systems transforming the way we work. As I said, we did 16 use cases. Also, we did analyze literature, which was really a lot, and we found a lot. So, and as I take a look on the time I have, I won't go through all of that. I just want to show you that, of course, as I said, it depends and it's complex. And we found different impacts in the use cases for advanced robotics, here for psychosocial, for physical impacts, and for organizationals. And then you see here in blue and in yellow, you see advantages or disadvantages if it's not done well. And because we don't have the time, I leave that slide. I just wanted to show it's complex, there are many results. But if we want to do a management summary, and that's what I want to give here, and go back to a very high level, this is what we found. We found that if you have early involvement of employees and the provision of training, it's always helpful, it's always a good idea. If you have clear and direct communication during the transformation, during the change process, it's again an advantage and a very good idea. If you consider health and safety aspects from the beginning, again, always a good idea if you ask the human factors engineer, because then you don't build the system and in the end you discover, oh, he can't reach the interfaces, he can't sit in the chair for 8 hours. So that's always a good idea to do that very early. And furthermore, one last slide that's not so much organizational, is you need a consistent application of interaction design principles. They are standardized for, I would say, 30 to 40 years. So this is knowledge that is out there, it's an ISO standard, and it's a really good idea to consider that if we are talking about AI-based systems or advanced robotics. Well, I also have to tell or admit that everybody who's in the room and does human factors engineering for quite some time, to some extent, this is a no-brainer, because this is not new. I don't have to link that to robotics or AI-based system. I could write personal computer, I could write anything. But it shows that these principles are core principles of designing work systems, of designing work equipment, and of designing work in general, and should always be considered in the age of digitalization, but also in other ages that might come after digitalization. And I see now I have really a lot of time left, if we said 15 minutes, no, but maybe I just then, somebody else has 2 more minutes. But what I wanted to show you in the end, because I showed you the no-brainers of what to consider when you develop technology. Maybe to give you an outlook on what is coming next, because the campaign is ending this year, but robotics aren't. So what do we see in robotics? And I brought you it's called the hype cycle, the Gartner hype cycle, and this is that red line over here where we start, well, you have some technology, then you have the so-called peak of inflated expectations, then you go down to the trough of disillusionment, then you have some slope of enlightenment, and you come to the plateau of productivity. With all that mountain here can be higher or lower, that valley here can be deeper or maybe not so deep, and that plateau, of course, can vary depending on the technology. But I just wanted to show you the different technologies we see in robotics, and one is the industrial robotics. We see that since, I would say, the 80s. So you have a fence, you have a robot. I mean, if you look in welding in the body shop of car manufacturing, that's fully automated. We know that, so we have plateau of productivity. We have that kind of mobile cobots, collaborative robots, although I have to say I'm not a big fan of that cobot term, because collaboration means same time, same place, and very often these systems work in sequence. So they do something, I do something, we hand over something, and they continue, and that's more of a cooperation anyway. So these mobile, let's call them mobile lightweight robots, we are moving to the plateau of productivity, because we discovered cobots cannot be used in any workplace. We can't put them anywhere, even if they are collaborative. But I would say we left that valley of disillusionment. Then we see here these quadruped robots you might have seen out there, walking on 4 legs. The big advantage between this system and this system is you can use it in unstructured environments. Because as an engineer, if you have a plain floor, as we have here, take always something with wheels, because it's cheaper. Because making a robot walk on 2 legs or 4 legs costs money if you have plain floor wheels. And finally, and that's the last slide, because I think we've seen a lot of these videos coming out lately of these humanoids. And there, my opinion, I would definitely say, okay, we had that technology trigger. We all know, no, I don't want to name any products. We know the videos, and we are still on that way to that peaked inflated expectations. Because currently you see them and you can use them in the household, in the manufacturing industry, in whatever. But I would say currently we are waiting. There will be a drop because these systems won't be able to do all the jobs we can do currently. And maybe one final remark there. Also, we have to be careful if we develop these technologies, we have to develop them to do the tasks that are very dangerous for us. So not the easy tasks, not standing here giving a presentation. That's an easy task. But crawling under the table, connecting wires, that's what I don't want to do. And that's what the humanoid then has to do. I know the engineers won't like that because that's a very difficult task from an engineering perspective, but these are the tasks that the machines are supposed to do to assist us. And with that being said, I hope I gave some interesting insights into our project, into the campaign and that specific field of interest. And maybe we can discuss a little later. This is my contact data, and I'm still 1.5 minutes ahead of time. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Sasa, for the interesting presentation. I'm sure that the audience may have some questions, but I would suggest to take all the questions at the end of this session. So please take a note of the question and you will have the opportunity to ask our distinguished speakers at the end of the session. The next speaker is Ms. Cecilia Urzi Brancati, who unfortunately is not here with us, so she will connect from Dublin, the headquarters of Eurofound. There she is. Welcome, Cecilia. Cecilia is a research officer in Eurofound. She holds a PhD and a master's in international economics and specializes in quantitative methods, empirical analysis, and in systematic evidence reviews. Her work explores how digital technology, including artificial intelligence, is affecting working conditions and work organization. And she also researches key policy topics, including non-standard employment, the gender pay gap, and the rise of the platform economy. During the previous years, we had the opportunity to collaborate with Eurofound in a number of studies. And it's great to have Cecilia here today and present us with the latest findings of the European Working Conditions Survey that was conducted in 2024. So, Cecilia, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. And yes, as Johnny said, I'm Cecilia Urzi Brancati. I work for Eurofound in the employment unit. I can see that there's a slight delay, maybe. And I'm really sorry I cannot be there, but I'm thankful for the technology that is allowing me to actually present online. So the work I'm going to present today is still, there's still preliminary findings, but I thought it were quite interesting from the latest survey, and so I wanted to share it with you. Okay. So before presenting the actual empirical findings, I just wanted to introduce roughly a framework to study the digital revolution and its impact on the main policy areas, such as employment, working condition, living condition, and industrial relations. This is based on a concept paper that was first written in 2017 by some of my colleagues at Eurofound, and now we have updated it, and also especially to take into account of AI and algorithm management. And we updated also this is called vectors of change that are driving the digital revolution, and they are automation, as you know, the replacement of human tasks by machines, augmentation, which is a very closely related concept, and is when we use technology to improve our ability to carry out some tasks and to make them more efficient, sometimes even more creative. Digitalization, which in the European framework is considered as the transformation of analog information into digital and vice versa through sensors and other devices. And finally, platformization or coordination by platforms, which is also closely related to algorithmic management and is basically the use of digital systems or networks that use algorithms, that is a set of software rules to give instruction, monitor performance, etc. And the part both of our social life and our working life. And so this is more or less our conceptual framework. And as I'm saying, I'm mostly studying employment and working condition, while a lot of my colleagues are doing living conditions and industrial relations. And the way in which we sort of translate our conceptual framework into empirical analysis is using the data from the European Working Conditions Survey, which is probably the biggest undertaking in a way in Eurofound. It's a very, very large household survey. It's about 36,000 interviews. They're face-to-face, computer-assisted paper interviews at workers' home. It's more than 120 questions, so it's very rich, in 35 countries, 32 languages. And also it's been going on for more than 30 years, so we can also do trend analysis. And obviously here I will not go into detail, but I think the latest wave has been released for the public and it's online, and then the overview report is also online, so if you feel free to have a look. So the first, as we were saying, I'm going to show you basically some of the very basic findings, some descriptives on the use of the cutting edge technologies at work. And then we're going to combine them to show what kind of workers' profiles and how the use of these technologies is associated with different working conditions, which are measured through the job quality framework, which I will show later. So in terms of use of generative AI, this is actually a very simple question that was asked in the survey, and it was basically just a yes or no answer. And as you can see, the countries are ordered in descending order from sort of the highest proportion of people who use generative AI at work to the lowest. And while the EU average is still 12%, which is fairly low, and I need to use a caveat here because this was conducted in 2024, so it is possible that now in the last year the usage has increased. However, what also is worthy of mention is that there is the usual, sort of north-south West divide, but Luxembourg, probably driven by Eurostat, has been one of the biggest adopters, so 25%, which means that 1 in 4 workers who answered our survey is actually using generative AI, and it's followed by Sweden, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and Denmark. And then at the very bottom, we have Greece, Italy, and Portugal. And also something that should be mentioned is, for instance, in Italy, in 2023, ChatGPT was sort of banned. Then obviously they went back. So that could also explain why the usage in certain countries is still quite low. However, possibly another explanation is the sort of industrial structure of the country. And so in this slide, I'm going to show the use of advanced digital technologies by economic sector. And the chart on the left shows the use of generative AI and cobots. So this is the percentage, again, of workers who say yes. And the chart on the right shows the proportion of people using tools for online meetings, such as this one, and cooperation platforms. So basically your Asana, Trello, but also simple like Google Docs, which help us cooperate and work at a distance. And as you can see, there's actually, first of all, there's quite a lot of similarity in terms of the sectors that are most and least exposed to these technologies. The financial services come on top in both charts, apart from the use of cobots. So as you can see, in terms of generative AI, nearly more than 1 in 4 workers in the financial services sector uses generative AI, which drops to about 2% in agriculture, while also other services is about 20% and education is about 18%, I think. While the use of cobots is expected is much higher in the industry in general, so it's about 10%. However, even though, as we know, AI gets most of the headlines, because we all talk about generative AI, it's actually the tools for online meetings and cooperation platforms that are the most widespread. And it's like 80% of the financial services or public administration, at least for online meetings, but also cooperation platforms is about 70%. But also education, well, it's much less in agriculture and commerce, but still we're about 10%. So again, they're very widespread tools for cooperation and collaboration. The next slide instead looks at what we call algorithmic management, which my colleague Anna Rosa will explain to you in the next presentation. And in particular, the European Working Conditions Survey measures algorithmic management and monitoring in, with these 3 questions. And it's a Likert scale, so it's from so how the extent to which the performance is monitored, the tasks are automatically allocated, and the hours are automatically allocated. And here I'm combining those who say to a large or some extent, so leaving out the other 3 categories. And as you can see, first of all, again, it's by industry, by sector. Again, the financial services are ranked first, both for monitoring performance and for the automatic allocation of tasks. Instead, the automatic allocation of hours is less prevalent, but still quite prevalent, especially in health or other service and transport. And it's interesting how the reason why we're looking at algorithmic management specifically is because it has been proven in the literature to have a strong impact on working condition, and especially when it comes to autonomy and discretion of the worker. But because, again, when we have a lot of information on these single indicators, it's hard to see the overall picture. And then, as I was saying before, there is a fair amount of overlap in the different vectors, but it's also most of these technology are not used alone by themselves, but are used in combination. So what we did, we basically looked at the data and we tried to simplify and underline and identify some underlying structure of the technology. So we ran some factor analysis of principal component, and what emerged were clearly 2 distinct factors. So which we put on the y-axis, we have algorithmic control, and then on the x-axis we have collaborative intensity, which goes from low to high. And then we also looked at, since the distribution was quite skewed to the right, we also isolated we defined high exposure, so by taking the top 25%, and so we generated 4 different categories of worker profiles. So when it's low, both on collaborative and algorithmic control. So collaborative intensity, by the way, it means it's the use of generative AI, remote meeting tools, and cooperation platforms, while algorithmic control is all of the algorithmic management variables, which we saw in the previous slides. So automatic task allocation, machine determined working hours, and performance monitoring. So the type of workers that have low exposure to all of these technologies are called the analog, and they still represent the greatest majority of workers, so it's 54%. And then we have on the other opposite, that's high exposure to both, is the datafied, which is about 9%. Monitored workers are workers who have low collaborative intensity but high algorithmic control, and they're about 1 in 5. And finally, we have this sort of augmented workers. So they score high on collaborative intensity but relatively low on algorithmic control. And what is the reason why we generated these categories is to understand in a more simplified way, you could say, how they differ in terms of working condition. But first, I'm going to show you how the digital worker profiles vary across the EU. And as you can see, the chart is ordered by increasing order of the analogs. And so we have, obviously, this chart is very simple, is a more like a concentrated distilled version of the findings we already seen. So we have the Nordic countries like Sweden, Denmark, and Netherlands that have very low proportion of analog workers and a relatively higher proportion of augmented, for instance, in Sweden, but also in the Netherlands, and very high of monitored workers in Denmark, for instance. And then on the other end of the scale, you go, again, the sort of more Mediterranean countries, so Portugal, Hungary, and Greece, that have a much higher proportion of analog workers. So over 65%, so 2/3 of the workers still have very limited that use technology in a very limited way. Again, if we show the differentiation by industry, we see that agriculture and construction still show a very large proportion of the so-called analog workers. And while as we expected, the financial services score really high pretty much in all the categories. So they have a fair amount of analog workers, less than the average, but then a large amount of monitored, datafied and augmented workers. While transport is quite interesting. And I think in transport, especially when we're talking about logistics, there's a very large proportion of monitored workers, much larger compared to the other sectors. And these are, again, because as we know from the literature and from studies, the automatic allocation of tasks and working hours is very prevalent in the transport sector. Now, so how do we see what is the impact of these digital technologies in on working conditions? We basically use the job quality framework as in the European Working Conditions Survey, and the idea is to look at quality, including fair pay, working time quality, prospects, and as actually the next slide will probably show a bit better. So it's 7 indicators and sub-indicators which have been proven to have a clear causal relationship with workers' well-being. And so we start from the physical environment, which is obviously probably the most closely, I mean, it's OSH. So it's physical risks and physical demands, social environments, which is both positive and negative aspects, so adverse social behavior and discrimination, social support, but also management quality, work intensity, which in look at the pace determinants and interdependency, a working time quality, which is also, it looks both as sort of a typical and atypical working time, flexibility, but also working time arrangement and predictability, and earnings, because obviously it's about fair pay and also predictability of earnings, and fairly paid in relation to efforts. And we look at skills and discretion, which are put together in the framework, because in a way having skills is, I mean, if you don't have the discretion to use your skills, then they're worth less in a way. So it measures the cognitive dimensions and the ability of an establishment or of a firm to actually let their workers flourish. And it also looks at training. And finally, prospects includes both like employment status, career prospects, job security, and working condition prospects. And so in the next slide, we kind of put it all together. We look at how the different workers' profiles are associated with the 7 job quality indicators. And so as we can see, some of the indicators like physical and social environment are relatively similar across the different profiles, while other indicators like such as skills and discretion or work or earnings show a very clear gradient. So what we call in the end is like the analog penalty and the augmented premium, because as you can see, augmented workers, I shall remind you, augmented workers is the workers that score pretty high on the collaborative technology, but relatively low on the monitoring and algorithm management technologies, are the ones who report higher skills and discretion, but also relatively better physical, social environment, working time quality, earnings, and prospects. So while the situation for the analog workers is actually in certain cases is better, like better working time quality and work intensity, but worse in the sense of skills and discretion and earnings or prospect. So basically, as we see also in the next slide, putting it all together, again, there is almost always a premium for the augmented, in the sense that so the slide on the chart on the left shows whether workers are stressed all or most of the time by worker profile, and the slide on the chart on the right shows how workers feel that the workplace is their health at risk. And again, we can see that the augmented is usually the best sort of category, even though in this case analogs fare quite all right. While what is interesting is that the workers that are subject to the monitoring of performance or the automatic allocation of tasks and hours are the ones who are more likely to feel stressed or to have feeling that the workplaces, their health at risk. And I think I am pretty much finished. So as I was saying, these are still preliminary findings. We are working on that. We're going to be publishing the paper using the profiles and their impact on working conditions at some point in February, and it's in collaboration with ETUI. So it's a bit early to draw conclusions, but what we can see already from the data is that the impact of technology is not even. First of all, that there's a digital divide, as I'm sure we all know, and that some countries, especially the sort of Nordic and more Western countries, seem to fare better in terms of digitalization. There's also a big divide in terms of sector, with some sectors like the financial sector or services in general that are particularly exposed both to sort of collaborative technologies, and so like augmenting technologies, and to the more monitoring technology and algorithm management. And then our results on a working condition would suggest that policymakers should look more into like fostering the sort of technologies that that improve augmentation, so collaborative technologies, or the use of generative AI, again, to augment people's skills, and put some limits or restriction to algorithmic management, algorithmic control, not beyond platform, because we know that there is the directive on platform work, and where algorithmic management is specifically mentioned, but algorithmic management is not just a feature of platform work, even though that's basically where it's most evident, but it's now spreading to traditional sectors, such as we see in the financial sector. And that's pretty much it. I don't know if I've been really fast. I think I probably have. So that's it. And yeah, if you... Hello.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for the very interesting presentation and presenting us the insights from these preliminary findings from your latest European Working Conditions Survey. At this point, I will also take the opportunity to remind to the audience our OSHA barometer that includes so many different data sets and visualizations on main indicators of occupational safety and health, including data from our surveys, OSPAL's SNR survey, as well as surveys coming from other EU agencies like the European Working Conditions Survey. So I think, as I mentioned, we will have the time for some questions at the end. So I will move now to our next speaker. I'm really happy to invite Ana Rosa Pesole for her presentation. Ana Rosa is a labor and innovation economist specializing in new forms of work and the impact of technology on employment and society. Her research explores how digitalization and online platforms are reshaping labor markets and work organization. Ana Rosa holds a PhD in applied economics and is currently a labor market specialist at the International Labour Organization, ILO. Ana Rosa has participated actually in 2 of our projects, working in the area of algorithmic management and psychosocial risks associated with digitalization. So without any further delay, Ana Rosa, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation today. And I'll try to keep my presentation not too long, because I think that we will all gain if we have some opportunity actually to let you ask a question and take advantage of the fact that we are here, and perhaps we can try to explain things that have been not very clear or that have been explained in a very, very rushed way. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to focus specifically on algorithm management. What we've seen in the first presentation, it was how actually robots or other type of machinery can change the way in which work is organized and can change also the way in which work is carried out. Those are very visible, but there are some other type of technologies which are not necessarily so visible. And this is what normally, we put into the realm of algorithm management. So sometimes you will notice that, for example, like when you are in Teams and one of your colleagues write to you, and then you have like the suggestion to the reply, which most of the time, it's kind of like, okay, well, let's take that one. And, or like for the emails. And at the time, why is it not coming up? This one? You see, the expert in technology. So, and then you have other types of algorithms that sometimes works, but you are not very aware that they are working. And those are, for example, like software, productivity software that may be or maybe not installed in your computer that, for example, at the end of the month tells your boss or your director supervisors how many websites did you visit which were not very relevant for job purposes, or how many times, like you were idle, which basically means you were not either using the keyboard or touching your mouse. Now, what it is algorithm management. So algorithm management refers to any algorithms, any data-driven system that is being used in the workplace in order either to support or make directly decision about something that is related about, either the task that you have to carry out or the way in which you have to carry out the task. It also used in order to manage the workflows within the organization. So, for example, it's been used, for example, to decide to whom assign a specific task and to which team or in which particular type, in which particular end set of work. And also, one of the things that is very peculiar about algorithm management is that originally it was born together with the platform economy. And it was actually what it was used mostly by digital level platform in order actually to start providing that type of services. But what we've seen in one of the work that Yanis was mentioning before that we carried out with OSHA is that actually the level of extensions of algorithm management in those work that are called traditional sector, it's very, very spread. There are several research that we did together with OSHA and also with other colleagues in the Joint Research Center of the Commission that look at this aspect. And then what we found is that, for example, in some sectors such as like automotive industry, okay, this is a little bit like a given, everybody would expect that, but there are other sectors which are a little bit more striking, which is like, for example, the health and education sectors. And if you see the level of penetration in health of the use of algorithm and AI system, you start understanding which is the importance and the policy relevance that actually talking about the system and how they affect works and working condition and workers' right is really something that needs to be developed. So, let's see if it is the right one. Yes. So, what is normally algorithm management used for? Generally, algorithm management can be used for either planning, which basically means defining which is the course of action that the workers has to take. That could be either telling them how to develop the task, how to carry out the task, or also could be, for example, how to tell the manager to organize the task. So one example, just to give you an idea of planning, just to give a concrete idea, there are several AI systems which are based on algorithms that use algorithm management in order to decide the staffing for the emergency department in hospitals. So this works in a way in which basically, while normally there was the general rules in which they have a that number of people called to cover a shift. Now they're using AI systems that are basically updating in real time using information that comes from other sources. Like, for example, tonight, as we know, there is a big match in town. So this will be one of the things, will be one of the elements that the system will take into account because it will use it in order to think that there is higher possibility actually that more people will go to the AR. So, and in this way, basically they manage to regulate the number of doctors and nurses that have to be present in the emergency department from a certain hours to another hour. Now, all of this, it's absolutely helpful for example, doctors and hospitals because they can manage better their life. However, as we will see, this is something that it is very helpful in a context where there is a clear regulation about workers' rights. When it comes actually in places where such boundaries are a little bit more flexible, then you see that the use of the system, it could take a completely twisted way. It could become some sort of like a dystopic way of making doctors and nurses competing in order to be called to go to work, because otherwise they won't get enough points, enough credit, and therefore they cannot get, the access to the next shift. Those are things that actually we found in our analysis. The second one is organizing. Organizing, it means several things. It doesn't mean just telling you what you have to do, but it means also telling, like, it could be as easy as telling, okay, so worker A does task B, from a very, very complex way in which it tells you that worker A has to do task B following exactly this step, this point, and then this other, and then this one, and then another one, and then listing all the action, leaving the worker with a very, very, very strict ability discretion about the way in which to develop the task. Why this is important? Because this is important because from an OSH perspective, it has actually two different effects. From one side, some workers reported that when the system is not, and here I go back also to one of the points that Sasha made in his presentation, that it was the development of technology has to be done together with workers, because when this happened and the workers had the say in the way in which this listing was done, actually the worker reported an improvement in the mental stress because there was a less cognitive load. They felt more secure that they have followed the procedure. They know that the procedure is asking something that is like, it's possible. It's not something like absurd. It's not something like dictated by whatever number of optimization is coming out from the algorithm, but it's something that has been decided together. So at the end of the shift, they would feel more relieved because they know they've done all the tasks, they do not have any doubt about this, and so basically that will make easier their life. On the other way around, when this is not agreed with the worker, and then they do not understand which is the logic of the task, and they also think that actually some of the tasks should be done in a different way, the order should have done in a different way, they are in the right opposite situation. The cognitive load is very high, the stress is very high, and there is a sort of like general feeling of burnout after a while because, you know, they basically feel like they have no control, and they are under a system that they have no power at all, they have no agency at all to modify. Directing is another aspect, and this is basically directing. It means that the automated system, or the algorithms in this case, can actually allocate information and give direction to the workers, you know, even if they are not physically in the place. This is very common for remote workers, but this is also common for platform workers, for example. So, or for even like autonomous workers that are somehow subcontracted by the company. So this is another aspect that is important. Why it is important? It is important because one of the main elements that technology is bringing up is the possibility of having a way of directing, monitoring what the workers are doing, even when they are not physically in the establishment, and even when they are not part of your own organization. While before you had the power to control or to monitor a worker only if this worker was your own employees, now what you have is that actually, even when you have like autonomous relationship with the worker and they are independent contractor, you can tell them, well, but the way in which I want you to do this is that you have to follow this route, for example. In order to go from A to B, you have to follow this, you know, the indication that I'm giving to you. So, why this is important? This is important because it has a lot to say about the classification of the worker, which is not necessarily a point per se, but when it comes to OSH, it is a major issue. Because as you will know, many countries, normally they have regulations that are just related to employees, you know, and there are obligations for employers that are just when you are, you know, an employer of employees. But when you are a client or when you are an independent worker, then I mean, this sort of like regulation are a little bit blurred, or if any, or inexistent at all in some cases. So, is this an issue when it comes to automation? Of course it is an issue. And why it is an issue? Because, for example, like if I am a driver or a rider, not necessarily for a platform work, it could be even for a traditional company, because this is, we're not talking about just the platform economy, we're talking about even traditional company. It could be even like the pizza place that send you the delivery guy. If I actually have this person as independent contractor, which basically means I am not in charge of the health and safety of this person, but then at the same time, I make him go to one place to another according to the rule defined by the algorithm that I'm using. And so I'm telling this person that he has to be there in 3 minutes because otherwise I'm not gonna pay, or otherwise the service is not gonna be considered complete. Actually, you are putting an hazard. This is an hazard actually you are creating for an independent worker. So this is a sort, I mean, I want you to pinpoint this because then I'm going to show you later on some of the policies that have been introduced in order to deal with this. Then, and Then, again, of course, I mean, this is the obvious thing, a little bit that one can think about. Algorithm management are used in order to monitor and supervise what workers are doing. I mean, this is sort of very easy. I mean, I don't think it needs much explanation. And then the last point, it was the point about evaluation, which is another interesting point, which has been already mentioned this morning when we had like the general speech from the Ministry of Labor of the Basque Country, when he said basically, like, you know, you go out to the toilet now, you have the faces where you have to put the smiles. I mean, like, you have it everywhere. You have after, you know, the counter in the supermarket, you have it in the airport, you have it out of the toilet, you have like the 5 stars online, you have it, like, you've seen it in many cases, which is another aspect, however, has not been mentioned about this. And this is super important. The evaluation of the worker in this way, it is basically outsourced to people. And this is another aspect. Well, before, the only person who was responsible to evaluate the quality of the job that you had done was your boss, no, where the people actually were hiring you. Now, all of a sudden, you know, you are being evaluated by whoever passed and come into the shop. It's not even the first time, because there's always been a sort of like customer relationship things. But however, you know, like the difference is that the massive and the easy way you can do this may change it, because one thing is that you have to, you know, to block like 5 people immediately after they bought something, and you have to ask them, okay, could you reply to some question, was the waitress nice, was the waitress, so someone take the time to think. Another thing is that someone is passing, it gives like a hit, and if by mistake is hitting the wrong button, oh well, whatever, you know, bye-bye, that's it. And this is the other things. And then finally, all of this, all the things that we've seen before are related to what it is actually your career path. And by career path, I mean the possibility that you can accede to other tasks, because sometimes, you know, when you do not have enough tasks completed, or you do not have enough evaluation, you do not even have the possibility to go on and to accede to other tasks. Or, for example, like they can decide that, well, I mean, we deactivated you because, I mean, this is like, it's not working. This is not like the way in which we're seeing it. Now, of course, I don't want to give like a bleak way, because I'm really a big technology supporter in general, and I do think that actually if we use technology in the right way, there is a very, very big possibility of having an improvement, a real improvement in working condition and in workers' life, particularly when it comes to OSH. And these are like, for example, many ways in which technology could be used. Some of them were already presented this morning, so I'm going to be very short, like, you know, when it comes to hazard detection, or when it comes like improved like risk prevention. But there are not only this, there are also some risks that could be actually addressed using algorithms. So, for example, like there are some application, you know, of safety protocols that if you use by technology and algorithms can actually really help not only preventing like hazard and physical risk, but also like to prevent burnout, and also to prevent like to reduce mental stress. So again, the possibility, and now I'm going to connect to what Cesira said in one of her funding, is not about the use of technology. Many times, the stress was reported about the control embedded in the use of technology, which basically means that there are ways in which this thing could be calibrated, could be balanced in order to see if there is excessive control, if it goes beyond what, you know, is supposed to be like the normal level of control that an employer could exert over workers, and at the same time help it. Another thing that algorithms are very good at is to profile people. You might know that because all of a sudden you receive, like, you know, the commercial of exactly the things you were talking about 3 seconds before. And this is exactly the same logic. You can personalize and you can make a profile about what are your OSH needs. So, for example, like in one of the research that we did for OSH, and this was super interesting, we did an analysis of automotive companies, which is a big one, and they do, like, they are in the high target of the market, they are in the high level of the market, and they produce very small component for whatever part of the motors, I can't remember. But anyway, they do a very, very, very specific jobs, which basically means workers have to be very, very careful because they are under a zero waste production rules, which basically means they cannot have waste. They have to make sure that each piece come out in a very, very good way. So what they do is they need to have a specific workstation. And one of the things that we found was really amazing about this place is that basically these people were actually having the workstation adapt according to their age, according to their ergonomic issue, if they had any musculoskeletal issues, and so on. So this is another way in which technology could help. And this was also feedback that came from algorithms. Then another thing, of course, I mean, we've seen it, so I'm not going to spend much time about it, is the potential for reducing dangerous tasks. Now, the risk, we talk about the risk again, so I'm going to go through it very quickly, because the risk, as we said, is the fact that you might have work intensification, and this was the example of the 3 minutes to deliver the pizza, for example. There is a loss of autonomy, and this was the example of the moment in which, you know, you don't know which, you cannot choose anymore which work task you can, the list of the task, the way in which task you're doing. The uncertainty, because if you don't know which are the rules, which are the basis for the rules to command you, of course, I mean, like, you do not have, like, you don't feel like you're controlling this. And then what you have, of course, is the level of surveillance, the level of control, but this was already mentioned by Cecilia, so I'm gonna skip this one part. And then all of this can bring to fatigue, physical strain, mental health impacts, and they can basically compromise the general well-being of the worker. Now, I just want you, I'll skip this one because it's not important. I just want you to give a couple of examples of initiatives that have been taken by member states. Those are related to the platform economy. I'm presenting this related to the platform economy just because it has been like the first attempt in OSHA or regulating and algorithms of regulating like anything that is associated with technology. So, I mean, eventually they will become less specific and more open to any other sectors. But in general, for example, what we see is that there is a general requirement to introduce, first of all, an evaluation of which are the risks associated with automated decision-making system and monitoring system. There is also an attention in general on how to prevent occupational injuries and occupational diseases, including psychosocial hazard. And what it is that basically they have been asked for is an ex ante and ex post evaluation of the monitoring and automated decision-making system that they are using. And another aspect is that also prohibiting like some of the activity done by entirely by an algorithms. I want to present just a couple of other examples. I mean, you can have the slides so you can see that with more tranquility after. But the reason why I wanted to present this is because this is interesting. For example, Italy, they extended this OSH protection also for workers who are in casual working relationship and self-employment relationship. And this is one of the example that we gave. It is particularly specific for riders and for drivers, for riders, but I mean, this is one of the example. Another example in the sense in other countries is, for example, Uruguay is doing the same thing, the Republic of Korea is doing the same thing, Singapore is doing the same thing, China is doing the same thing, and also like Australia. They are all having like extended version and extended protection for workers who are recognized as autonomous workers who, however, have some form of dependency, let's call it this way, from the machine. So, and just very quickly, just for those of you who could be interesting, the ILO is currently in the process of debating the next convention about realizing decent work in the platform economy. So the standard setting is a 2 years procedure that eventually will hopefully lead to the promotion of a convention. And we are still in the discussion, but just to give you an idea, we are now between the brown report and the blue report. So which basically means we have already had the first discussion in June last year. There were some conclusions that were adopted. some other that are still up for debate. So now we are in the process in which the office is receiving all the requests coming from government and other constituents, and we are processing their comments, and we're going to produce the blue report, which is going to be the second revised text for the convention, which eventually will be debated in June this year. And I think I can stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ana Rosa, for presenting all these interesting findings and the different challenges and opportunities when it comes to the use of this technology. As we usually say, technology is morally neutral, so it's about how we use technology, and in our research we very often highlight the importance of following this human-centric approach when it comes to the use of either automation or algorithmic management. So it's always the stress of the last speaker. So without any further delay, I will present Ms. Giovanna Prandini, the founder and CEO of Perla del Garda. Now we are going to move to Northern Italy, a winery that has won one of our Good Practices Awards for this campaign. Giovanna is an accomplished executive and entrepreneur with academic foundation on economics and social sciences. Since 2006, she's a founder and CEO of Perla del Garda, a winery in Northern Italy that is among the Good Practice Awards winners. She's chairing the board at Morenica Società Agricola, if I pronounce it right, and is a recognized leader in the wine industry and the non-profit sector. So, Giovanna, the floor is yours to say a few words about your experience regarding the use of technology, how you have used in your winery, and some thoughts for the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you, Yannis, for this kind invitation. I want to present our project. It's a bespoke project made in partnership with IFOS, that has been for us the information provider. So we have the president and the general director here with us. And so I have to thank them because I didn't know about the campaign, and they have been informing us and supporting us also in this period. And I want to thank you, Cobo, as well, the technical partner. We have with us Enrico Linetti, that is the owner, and Luca Danieli, that is the engineer in Cobo, who has paid attention to our requests and in order to try some solutions together. So, where are we? Perla del Garda Estate Winery is located in Italy, Lake Garda wine region. We employ 13 people directly in the winery and vineyards, with a total staff of 22 across the company. Since 2013, the vineyards have been farmed organically and in a sustainable way, and we have several certifications, Equalitas, that is the most important in Italy, Viva, SQNP, make it sustainable. So this recognizes our commitment to a very holistic sustainability, where we don't pay attention only to environment, but also to the economic and social part of our work. What do we do? Perla del Garda is a true estate winery producing wine exclusively from its own vineyards. One of the greatest strengths of estate production is the complete control over every step of the process, from vineyard management to vinification and bottling, which guarantees uncompromising quality at every stage. For today's consumers, we increasingly seek authenticity and transparency. This means that we can trace every bottle back to the exact vineyard plot and describe precisely how the wine was made. The main challenge for us lies in the significant investment required to maintain the vineyards and operate a fully equipped winery. So, in the vineyards, we have to face several risks. Operating a tractor in a vineyard requires skill and experience. Even brief lapses in attention can lead to serious accidents, such as collision with vines, sideways rollovers, running over workers performing manual tasks, and unintentionally striking visitors, animals, or obstacles between the rows. Stress and fatigue amplify these risks, potentially causing damage to the vines and the crops, while most critically compromising the safety of everyone on the estate. So our aim is to reduce stress and risks, and we took several steps between 2022 and 2024 to develop safety protocols. First of all, we conducted a detailed study and mapping of the vineyards, slopes, aspect, row length, and layout to analyze and establish critical risks. These parameters enabled the visual lane navigation kit created by Cobo to use artificial intelligence to detect hazards in real time and issue automatic alerts to the driver. The system continuously feeds operational data back to our technicians, who use it to train and refine the AI's neural network. This ongoing learning process allows the technology to progressively self-secure, improving its accuracy and effectiveness over time. The Cobo kit includes the following features, which are designed to enhance health and safety. Automatic lane guidance, even when the GPS is not present. The system only activates when all safety conditions are met, and it keeps the tractor precisely centered in the row. Second, real-time object detection instantly identifies and alerts the driver to people, animals, or obstacles. Automatic tilt alert continuously monitors lateral slope and speed, warning the driver the moment there is a risk of sideways rollover. Perla del Garda has partnered with Cobo to implement an advanced digital solution that enables tractors to drive themselves, using artificial vision for fully autonomous navigation along vineyard rows. This innovative system allows the operator to activate automatic robotic steering once inside the rows, taking over precise control of the steering wheel while the driver remains fully responsible for monitoring and overall operation. Life for us is a priority. So the most important result for us is the fact that the system detects any person in the row, immediately alerts the operator, and if necessary, automatically stops the tractor to prevent a collision. We also can have a lot of information by the kit, so a full traceability of operations, automatic recording of working hours and fuel electricity consumption by vineyard block and task type, sensor-based monitoring of tool and implement usage, enabling precise tracking of operating hours and timely scheduling of maintenance, ensuring the machinery always performs at peak efficiency and reliability. What for us is very important is the fact that our workers feel safer and more supported thanks to the automatic guidance system. They trust its smooth, precise operation and appreciate the immediate alerts it issues whenever a hazard is detected. The project has significantly reduced physical and mental fatigue for operators, lowering stress levels and contributing directly to better overall risk prevention. What is important as well is the fact that we could save money because we know better what we do in the vineyards, and we can also schedule maintenance of our tractors in order to keep them safe and in good condition. So you see the tractor is driving itself. For our assistance, and thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Giovanna, for traveling us to beautiful northern Italy. I don't know if there is any specific question from the audience because we are running out of time. Otherwise, I can see that there is a question coming from online participants. That is combined with one of my questions as well, in case. But yeah, let's listen to our audience first. Is there any specific question from the audience? Yes. You are going to have a microphone in 2 seconds.
Okay, thank you. It's very specific. It's slide 14 of the Eurofound presentation, because there was statistics which told me that monitoring had lower work intensity than analog workers. Monitored workers had lower intensity than analog workers, which seems counterintuitive to me, so I wanted to ask about that.
Cecilia, please.
Okay. So the point is sometimes the indicators go from 0 to 1. So higher value doesn't mean higher work intensity. It means a better indicator on the work intensity job quality index. Does that make sense?
I have to ask you again, I guess.
So they're all positive. Higher means positive for all of the indicators.
Okay. Okay. Now I got it. Thanks.
Yeah. It's actually, if you use the survey, all of the indicators are already made, so at least it guarantees harmonization and consistency among all the researchers that use the indicators. And then online, there's loads of explanations on how they're made, and because each indicator has got loads of components and subcomponents.
Thank you, Cecilia. Any further question from our audience? Yes. Wim, please.
Yes, thank you. Jonas, thank you for all the presentations. I want to check if my own personal summary of the first 3 presentations is the movie of Charlie Chaplin in 1930. I don't know if you know this film. It's Modern Times. And all the specific elements that were mentioned are in this movie. So I advise you after this meeting to search for this movie, Modern Times of Charlie Chaplin, and you will recognize practically all the issues that we discussed today. And is it correct that now it is a sort of continuation of Taylorism, but in a digital form, right? Can you recognize something of my impression, one of you, or am I totally wrong?
It's a tough one, and I think even the stream is online, so people are watching. Well, the simple answer, I would say, to 90% yes, because my personal opinion, because what you saw from my slides, I told you these are no-brainers. That was relevant 50 years ago. That's relevant today. I wouldn't say it's 100%. Because things are getting more complicated. Let's say, for example, we see more complex AI-based systems. And this is also research. We have done a lot of research, for example, with pilots. So we know how we do training for people who interact with complex systems that might fail. So how do we do that? So there's a lot of knowledge out there. But nowadays, we don't have like 10,000 pilots in Germany, but now we have like maybe 500,000 machine operators. And there it might be a little different in training, in interacting with these machines. So I would say we can learn a lot of human factors engineering research. We have to take a look there. We can adapt a lot. To some extent, we have to do a little research still, I would say. And one last remark, what you said, of course, the Charlie Chaplin film with Modern Times, digital Taylorism, there's a risk out there, but on the other hand, also what we learned from Ana Rosa, if we have that, well, if you have shadow, you have to have light. So the good thing is, if we have all these aspects of possible misuse, we also have all the possible aspects of using it positively to adapt to people, AI adapting to the capability of people, robots adapting to body size, body strength, because the systems are now able to be individualized. So that would be, well, that was a long answer, but I didn't want to say you are completely right. I would say 90% we still need some research, and there's a lot of light, but of course we see risk.
Thank you, Sasa. And Ana Rosa would like to...
Let me just add just a very little point on the top of what Sasha said, which I agree with, is that Taylorism is also the reason why you have welfare worker. From Taylorism is spurred a lot of need to adjust for what were problematic with that, and that was the answer. So to add on that, not because otherwise, if we live with just this bleak idea that we are doomed to succumb to technology, I don't think this is the message. I mean, we do have action that we can undertake. There are measures that can be undertaken. There is a need for social dialogue because there is an urgent need for social dialogue. And there is also another thing that we need to start to think in a greater layered way, because while before there was a very dichotomic situation where you had the workplace and the employers and the workers and, like the trade unions, and this was more or less the setting. Now what you have, it's another player. who have the people who actually provide the technology, which many times, employers, they do not produce themselves. They just buy it and they put it in the machine or in the workplace. So there is also this other thing that we should start thinking about, because also the employer, they need to have a voice in saying, because they need to have to make sure that they understand which is the limit to their responsibility and which is the limit to, what is the obligation they can take upon and which are the obligations that unfortunately are completely out of their control. So, just to give an idea, as from Taylorism, sports, a lot of regulation that we have of today, perhaps, we just have to start rethinking on how we have to regulate it or, put together people talking to each other again.
Thank you, Ana Rosa. Demi, I can see, it was the first hand that I saw, that's why.
I have a very simple question.
Yes, please.
I'm Demi Theodori, I'm from the European Trade Union Institute, and I have a simple question. Of course, I recognize that the underlying models are very powerful and can do a lot. very many good things for people and for workers. But how many of these applications we have out there and who have identified and studied are really driven by the interest of safety and health of on work? So I'm not, to come back to the question or the statement of Wim, I'm not questioning whether the technology itself is powerful and can be very benign. The question is whether the real life models out there are driven by the need to improve safety and health. Thank you. So the question is concrete. How many of these real cases are really driven by the need to improve safety and health?
Is this question for a particular speaker? I could start with and point probably based on the experience that we had from our case studies, because as I mentioned, in our research we developed numerous case studies when it comes to automation of tasks and algorithm management and also smart digital systems. Of course, in order for organizations and enterprises to provide us with information, usually they were the best cases in order for them to demonstrate how the application of the technology took place. But it was mostly those cases found to be most successful when the tasks, for example, for the project for automation of tasks to be automated were either dull, dirty, or dangerous, or when the initiative was coming from the workers that were the most successful implementations with less issues when it comes to the challenges when technology was implied. And Sasha could provide us with some further information for these case studies if you want. You could mention a couple of the examples regarding these case studies.
Maybe as
one of those was the case study that was presented by Sasha.
Well, I would say maybe as a brief answer, usually you have an external trigger to implement any kind of technology. When you have a specific, to improve OSH specifically, most of the external triggers, it's an accident. You have something seriously happening, and then people do this kind of OSH-specific technology. And for the rest of the cases, of course, it's always a mix of being more efficient. But as we have seen, if you talk to the workers and you implement it in a I think today we say co-creative or worker participation way, then you find good solutions to improve OSH, increase human well-being, and increase efficiency, I would say. And of course, we also see cases out there where this is not done, and usually that doesn't work out well.
Anna Rosa?
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, on the study that we did for the automotive industry, and we compared two different companies in two different European countries. One was the one that I mentioned before, that actually they have a very, very, very detailed attention to the worker feedback. And the experience of this company was they bought software from outside, they bought machinery from outside, and then they realized that this was not tailored enough to the need of the company. So what they decided to do was to invest in order to build their own system. And they did that using the workers as feedback in the chain. And what we saw in that one is that even many of the OSH issues, of course, were taken into account. Because, of course, workers were reporting, okay, this is actually it's a painful position. We cannot stay like this for 3 hours. On the other case that we got, which is a big car manufacturer, the approach was completely different. It was a top-down approach. So basically, the workstation was the site, like the technology was imposed, to the worker. And eventually, the problem that they got is that they basically had a problem because the turnover was very, very high in this workstation. So people were actually quitting because the work, when we ask which were the reason why they were quitting, we never got an answer. But the reality is that you can see that the turnover was very, very high, while in the other company, the turnover was almost zero. So OSH, it is convenient in many cases also for them. No, it's not. No.
Thank you, Ana Rosa. Giovanna, would you like to tell us what triggered actually your application?
Yeah,
probably?
I want to share my experience. I mean, we are a family company. We are not so big. We have 22 employees. But I want to say that we have started this project because there was an opportunity. But at the same time, I have some of my friends that works in agriculture, and some of them have lost parents or husbands for accidents. And this for me was a very good reason to make my part and to start the project. Then I have to say that has been a very good opportunity also to speak to my employees and to take some time of my time to listen their requests, because I have to say that it's not so easy to find young people today in Italy aiming to work in agriculture. So they ask technology to stay. So it's also a problem of fidelization. So safety, of course, is the main aim, but at the same time, the dialogue has increased, and their probably fidelity to the winery has increased as well. Thank you.
Your example was exemplary of a motivation that was based for a big percentage, in fact, on improving safety. So what I'm thinking more broadly, the most examples that I read about are about improving efficiency, improving productivity, which are legitimate objectives on their own, but they are not, I mean, then the occupational safety and health comes as a next step. After we have introduced the technology, then we have to check the box of OSH, and we have to, well, either include or engage with workers or try to fix some things after the technology has been selected. So that is, so I think your example is a very good example of introducing this technology due to concerns on safety and health. So thank you. It's a pity that you cannot drive a tracker, because that's the best thing that you can do on...
The problem is that the fact that the driver has to turn and check what is happening behind him. So it's important that the tractor is driving itself, so we don't have damages. Thank you.
So, yes, it's already 5:15, but it's very impressive the fact that you are still here asking questions. So let's have one last question from the audience.
Very fast. As today I have listened twice, once to Ana Rosa and the other to the base ex-Lendakari thing. The problem that now many workers are just not monitored just by their boss, colleagues as in the past, but also with when you press the button of the smiling for the cleaners, perhaps in the toilets. I don't know if it's related to the digitalization or to the algorithms, but I would like to see if perhaps Ioannis, as representative of the OSHA, is there any study? Because in the education sector, I have the same impression. In the past, normally the teachers were appraised, valued just by the management. Now the students in many universities, in many places, has to say how was the teacher behavior, knowledge, etc. So the teachers are in a difficult situation because they have both to respond in front of the managers that has a policy or knowledge to be imparted to the students, and on the other side to the students that perhaps the interests are opposites one to the others for different situations. Is there any study for, because as we are also in the social and stress factors in the labor hazards, I don't know if, I was wondering if there is something that can compare the situation between people who has only to respond to one part or are open to the public.
When it comes to data and specific studies, some data we collect based on our OSH Pulse survey, but also in our SNR survey. Now, when it comes to to these kind of situations, from my point of view, it is more to how these data that are collected and these kind of assessments are used, let's say, by the management. So I'm not fully aware of any specific study on that particular topic. I don't know if
we do not know on education. Not what we can just give you an example on how this evaluation criteria could in somehow be included. For example, in the study that we did together with the joint researcher with Ignacio, that is sit together with us today. Like what we did was we were looking at the health system. And what we found, which is very interesting, and that, for example, in South Africa, there was a system for surgeons to be evaluated on the basis of how quickly the patient was recovering, which basically means that, it created like a sort of like a super strange loop. Because, of course, when they had patients with comorbidity, and they knew that it will take longer for them to get ill. And so they knew that eventually, this would have impacted their own rating. Basically, they decided not to take them on, not to give them surgery, because they would get paid less. So this is not really super related with your question, but it is partially related with the idea that if you do not, as correctly Yanis was saying, if you can collect the data, you can use this data, but then if you create indicators that are dangerous, let's put it this way, or that are not very well calibrated, you may end up in a situation like this, where you have a lot of unintended effect happening. Because I don't think it was the intention of the hospital to have surgery and say, no, we don't want to have these people recovered. But I mean, it was one of the unintended effects of it.
Thank you, Ana Rosa. So I would say that we should, there are some more questions. Okay, let's take some more questions.
Hola, buenas tardes. Bueno, mi nombre es Jorge Nieto Ortiz. Venimos aquí una pequeña delegación de alumnos y profesores.
There's a delegation here of students from a vocational training center from Alcalá de Henares in Madrid. So you've spoken a lot about work and the impact that AI is going to have. So I would like you, what kind of message can we put across to our young people? Because many of them are going to be joining the job market at a point in time in which they're going to have to use AI. Because they need it for their professional, because they have to be data. What kind of message can we put across to our youngsters?
Esa es la pregunta de $1 millón, ¿sabes? Pero
Well, that's the $1 million question, but anyway, we'll give it a go.
But I mean, one of the things is the responsibility that we have with respect to them. And one of the responsibility is that for sure we have to make sure that the social pressure, there is no dumping on the use of technology because, like the job fear loss that Sasha was talking about before, this is a real issue, but this is a real issue only if there is not a social structure that actually allows you to have industrial relationship and social dialogues that actually see that the implementation of this technology cannot have it's not like profitability is not like the ultimate goal of the society. The profitability is the ultimate goal of the firms, is the ultimate goal of the capitalists, which is fine because this is what they're supposed to do. But as has been always, in the history since the Industrial Revolution, there is a need to balance. Just to give you a basic example, if you go back and you read like the newspaper from the 1880, something like that, you have like the mine coal owner saying that, are you kidding? You cannot forbid child labor because the kids are the only one who have little finger and have to go and get the coal without breaking it. So, I mean, if we were listening to that, we would still have like kids, in the mine having like child coal. So I think that the message, I don't know. What we can do actually as adults and policymakers and people who are engaged in this is to make sure which are the value as society that we want to carry out. And also perhaps, even to tell them this to young people so they kind of like, embed this value, it will be helpful.
Also, just to add on this, and this could be a message and a practice as well, is that from our point of view and based on our research, there are specific skills that we cannot afford losing. I mean, the AI, with the use of AI today, we can do so many things. And it is those skills that have to do with, for example, communication, decision-making, problem-solving that we need. Empathy, as Ana-Rosa mentioned, that we need to develop to young generations, because all the practical problems will be solved just by the use of the AI, but how about communicating with each other, socializing, making decisions, ethical behavior? This is the areas, from my point of view, that should be developed to future generations, because developing a web page or solving a difficult mathematical problem would be the easy part for these generations. Any last question then before closing this session? So to conclude with, I think that everybody would agree that there is no silver bullet when it comes to minimizing the challenges of the use of technology and maximizing the opportunities for workers and the workplace. But worker participation could play a key role on this, communication with all the involved parties, and transparency are very important things to consider. So I would like to thank, of course, social dialogue, Ana-Rosa. And with these words, I would like to thank you for participating in our session. I wish you have a fruitful networking session now, and everybody to enjoy the social event, dinner. Later today, we will welcome you at 7:30. 7:30, sorry. 7:30. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.